Ready to go?
Chair Stone, we can start anytime.
Perfect. Yeah, go ahead and you can start record, please.
Chair Stone,
Yes.
Councilmember Cormac,
Yes, although it says we're still in a practice session.
thank you. Councilmember Tanaka.
Here.
All present.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. Well, then, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the April 12th, 2022 regular meeting of the Policy and Services Committee. We'll start with oral communications. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to anything that is not on the agenda tonight.
Chair Stone, we do not have any raised hands.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Clerk. All right, then we will move on to action item number 1, receiving an update on the National Community Survey and potential feedback on survey questions. Does staff have a presentation prepared?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chantel Cotton Gaines, Deputy City Manager. Chair, it's a very brief overview, not a full presentation of all of the, or any slides. But just wanted to bring it to the committee's attention that in last year's budget process, the City Council approved to do a survey every other year. So the last survey was conducted in 2020, and the results came out early, or I guess mid 2021 in May. And so we are in the process of working with the survey consultant, which is Polco, previously was NRC. And they are coordinating with us so that we can get in the queue to do the survey this year. One of the questions that came up in the process of the last survey was just the timing of making sure the survey comes so that the results are to the council before the council priority setting retreat. So that is our goal in terms of a timeline to be able to start the actual process and get it out in the fall for being on the streets and asking the questions. The list of questions that you have in the attachment A for this is the actual survey from 2020. The Policy and Services Committee did review these questions in the previous year. I'm trying to pull up the exact date. Pardon me for a second. So these questions were reviewed in August of 2020 by the previous Policy and Services Committee. There's interest in making sure that we have continuity of the questions over time, which will allow us to see the trends and themes, as well as knowing that Palo Alto has quite a few custom survey questions that do not allow for the benchmarking aspect. So where that is the case, you usually will see that we don't have the benchmarks, we're just going against ourselves. And in other survey questions, part of the joy of using Polco, which does surveys more broadly, is that they are able to show us a little bit of benchmarking data. So we wanted to share this opportunity with the committee just to see if you all have any feedback on the questions as staff continues to have those conversations with Polco over the coming months. And that concludes my overview. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Con Gaines. Let's go to the public to see if there are any comments.
Chair Stone, we do not have any requests to speak.
All right, thank you. Then I will open it up to my colleagues and perfect. Councilmember Cormac, I was going to ask if you could use the screen. Councilmember Cormac.
Wow, it's like in 24 hours, I'd forgotten how to use this. Thank you, Chair Stone. Thank you, Ms. Cotton Gaines, for the presentation. So I'll just do a brief recap for my colleagues who I don't think were on Policy and Services 2 years ago. That's correct. I went through this in excruciating detail 2 years ago with the former assistant city manager. I think the survey is far too long. Many of the questions are duplicative. I've rarely heard my colleagues use the data effectively. But some of my colleagues felt differently, and apparently there are some staff who find some of them useful. So I'm not particularly interested in tilting at this windmill again. Maybe I'll just ask, how much does it cost us to do this survey with all of the custom questions?
with us opening the contract back up in order for us to switch the cadence of the survey, which is what we're in the process of doing right now. The survey is about $34,000 each time.
Okay. And it takes how long for people to fill it out?
Ooh, I don't remember that. I'll have to
Yeah,
look that up.
probably takes a while. It took me a pretty long time to read it. I'll just make a few comments about some specific things that we went through, and then we'll see how the chair decides to do it. I think last time, 2 years ago, I was the chair and we went through it in a lot of detail with staff, but it didn't result in significant changes because of the benchmarking you described. So like the third question in 3, recommend Palo Alto's libraries to friends. Not quite sure why that's in there. I understand the concept of net promoter score, but I don't know why we would just ask it about libraries. In 4, it says making all residents feel welcome. I think I'd be interested in understanding how welcome we make visitors feel. In 8, the last 2 questions seem close and perhaps could be combined, treating residents fairly and with respect. Again, many times where we say residents, I think we could say residents and or visitors. I think question 10 is just so far too long, and about a third of the way down, you see electric utility, gas utility, utility payment options. Those I think could all be moved into question 11 and make a lot more sense to have all the utilities questions together. And let me see if I had any other comments on that. Oh, D2, I always hate this one. Unemployed, not looking for paid work. I think we could also probably have, providing unpaid care for family members instead of unemployed, not looking for paid work. But I realize that's probably a structured question. Yeah, so, it'd be great if we use this information more consistently. Personally, I think because of the detailed level of the questions, it might be more appropriate to actually use this in the development of the budget, which the staff may already do. I think targeting to do it for the priority setting is less important to me because this is 4 years in a row and I just haven't seen it used that effectively by my colleagues, but I know some of them feel differently. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Tanaka, would you like to go, or I can make a few comments?
If you want to go first, you can.
Okay, sounds good. I just have a couple of comments. I do agree with Councilmember Cormack. I do think some of the questions are duplicative. There's definitely a few questions that could be removed or consolidated. There's definitely work that could be done here as far as streamlining the process. And I think anytime we can make a survey shorter and more concise, we're going to incentivize people to take it. I know I've been guilty, not on this particular survey, but I've been guilty of taking surveys before in the past, and you get to the point where it's taking you 10, 15 minutes and I just go, and I just lose interest and we'll move on. I think there's that concern when we have such a long survey. I do think the data is incredibly important. I kind of miss when we had this annually, but I do think as a cost saving tool, I understand the move to every other year. And I think that would be a conversation for finance when looking into the budget to see if that's something worthy bringing back, and maybe not this year, but maybe in the future when the budget recovers a little more, because I definitely do see value in it. And I think it's important to be able to see kind of our benchmark. And I really like that we're able to kind of, since there are many questions that are consistent with what other communities ask, to really be able to see where we're at in comparison to other like cities. I just had two specific maybe additions in section 3. I do think section 3 just is kind of odd, and I agree with Councilmember Cormack. When I saw the question about recommending libraries, that just kind of seemed odd that was one of the focus areas. I thought maybe they're recommending visiting downtown Palo Alto and or California Avenue would be I don't know, that seemed kind of relevant, because I've talked to many residents who say that they would never recommend people go to those places on like a Friday or Saturday night because of, or at least in the past, because of parking concerns. Whenever I'm talking to people from outside of Palo Alto, I'm always telling them, oh, you should go to downtown Palo Alto or California Avenue and talk about the great restaurants and bars and entertainment. So it'd be interesting to kind of see what residents feel about that. And then on section 10, it talks about, would you pull up exactly section 10, the exact regarding rating art programs and theater. Seems like those two things could be split up to, I mean, theater is art, but I do think people tend to think of maybe our art programs, that we have a really robust art program and services in the city. Seems like those two things could definitely be separated, because I think people, at least when I think about them, I think about them separately. Would be nice to see what people think about those two. Those are really my only kind of specific ads. I guess one question for staff, I was a little confused, Ms. Congains, when you said were the price tag of opening back up this survey with our consultants. But so I guess I'm confused. Are we already doing that? And so this is the opportunity to be able to say, hey, if things need to be changed, let's do it now. It's not going to cost any additional money. Or are you saying if we were to make suggestions and changes, that can cost us into 30,000 something?
Good clarification question. The amount of questions that we have is what they based our survey price on. So that piece of it is sort of the total custom questions that Palo Alto has as part of how they assess the fee. The part of saying that we opened up the contract was from the Polco perspective. When we switched the cadence of how the survey is happening, they interpret that as a contract amendment. We had locked in a really low rate previously for the annual, well, low-ish. So it was a little under $30,000 per survey before. And when we made the change, they then updated the rates to the slightly more recent rates. So that's more so what it was. It's not new questions or changes to these questions. I think the city would incur a cost if we added additional custom questions. So as long as we are making sort of changes, I think on the fringes, we're probably fine. But if we're carte blanche erasing a section or adding a whole new section, that probably is when we would incur additional cost.
Okay. So it seems like kind of most of the comments that maybe Councilmember Cormack and I have made so far don't seem like they would be dramatically revising this, and maybe would be kind of around the edges.
I think so, but I will follow up with the consultant as a follow-up discussion.
Okay, sounds good. I appreciate that. I mean, I would say if this is going to cost the city a lot of money to make these changes, I don't know how valuable that would be. I mean, I think this is really nitpicking the survey. I do continue to see this adding significant value to council and the decisions we make, and especially when we're kind of looking forward and understanding where the community is. And this is really kind of our one opportunity to be able to do that in survey form, at least that I'm aware of. So I think this is valuable. It's not going to cost us money. I think making some of those modest changes and doing what Councilmember Cormack mentioned, as far as just trying to streamline this a little more, making it a little more digestible for residents, would be really helpful.
And from a process perspective as well, the process that Councilmember Cormack referenced from 2020, we also shared this with our executive leadership team so that they could review it. The data from the survey is used in the budget process for performance measures in some cases. And so we just want to make sure that any changes aren't impacting those things, or at least we're impacting them with eyes wide open. So that will be part of the next steps of this discussion as well.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Tanaka?
Yeah, I think actually I share a lot of the thoughts that my colleagues have on this. So the survey, I also agree, is far too long. I think people suffer what's called survey fatigue. It's 5 pages, pretty dense. I really question how accurate it is, especially towards the end, because people I think are going to wear out fairly soon, even people who are very, very motivated. And I think you also get a bunch of bias when you do a survey like this. I think also given that we're only doing it ever so often now, it's not, I think it's not as relevant. So I do wonder, why are we doing this? It seems like I think some of my colleagues share the same sentiment. So I think where people have gone in terms of surveying is, rather than having these, once in a blue moon mega surveys that really take a lot of effort to fill out, people have gone towards industry, right? In terms of, if you look at like JD Powers, or you look at quality surveys, people have gone to mega surveys, from mega surveys to net promoter score type surveys, where it's literally just one question, but given all the time at the time that service is rendered. Because if you think about what our city is, it's a service organization, right? Here to serve the people of the city. And I challenge anyone to remember how the service was 2 years ago when the survey comes out. Maybe they had some issue with utilities or at the development center, and are they really going to remember that when they felt the survey, a couple of years later? I don't know. I think probably not. But if they were to get a survey immediately after the service is rendered, very much what happens in the private industry, I think that feedback would be far more useful. Now it's only one question, but I think that question will be well answered and have a much higher rate of answering, and also be more actionable, because you know what the feedback was, what service was rendered, and where that's attached. So I think that I really question why we're doing this, because I also have the same feeling that I wonder how it's used and how and the quality of the feedback. So I think we should, like, instead of spending money on this survey, I think we should spend money on implementing and rolling out more of the net promoter type of survey, where we have these survey questions sent out automatically every single time someone has interaction with the city. And I think that would be far more useful than what we're getting right now from this survey. And it's a lot more actionable for us as well, right? Because let's say we're getting a lot of negative reviews from our development center. Maybe we could take some action, right? Or maybe it's from our libraries, or maybe it's from something else. I think it's far more actionable than this mega survey, which, maybe someone filled out the first page, but all 5 pages. I mean, that takes some real dedication there to get someone to fill that all out. And it's only once in a great while, versus, if you do it like you guys said, and I'm sure everyone here has experienced it, right? You buy something on Amazon, you buy something on anything, and they immediately send you a survey. How was the product experience? They don't ask you. This thing is what, 18 long questions, plus like you have the D section, right? And the D section itself has 14 questions, right? So this thing is like 32 questions, right? 32 long questions, right? With a lot of choices, right? I mean, I really question whether that's going to get us the information that we want, especially it's not very timely. So I think we should go for shorter, more timely surveys. And so I don't support moving forward with this at all. I think it doesn't make sense. So, Chair, I don't know if you want to take a motion, but I'm willing to make a motion here.
Yeah, if you want to make a motion, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think we should use the budget. So my motion is we use the budget for this instead to move forward some of the net promoter work that we're doing right now, instead of funding this again.
Councilmember Cormack, are you give a,
May I ask a clarifying question
yes, please.
of staff? Is it permissible for us to make budget decisions at this meeting this evening? That was what I interpreted Councilmember Tanaka's motion to be.
Yeah, thank you. So Chair Stone and committee members, I think you can certainly pursue this idea, but the better course would be just to propose
a change in the survey as opposed to framing it as a budget issue. The manager can not expend budgeted funds. And so that, he can take it into account that the item's not specifically noticed to actually move money. Thank you.
Okay, well, I mean, the main thing is I don't want to move forward with this, so maybe, Molly, you can tell me, what do we do to not do that? Because I don't think it makes sense. It's a waste of money. I think we use the money for other surveying purposes.
Sure. So the motion could say that you propose to not pursue the survey this year and explore alternative feedback mechanisms to secure input on city services or something like that.
That sounds really good, Molly. So that's my motion.
Will the clerk be able to write that up, or are we not doing that this evening? We're just doing it more voice. Okay. I guess, but I'm interested, thank you so much to the clerk. Could I just ask the staff members who are here to weigh in? My recollection is that there is some utility to staff of some of these questions. Is that correct?
In the budget process for performance metric purposes, the feedback from the survey has typically been used. So you'll see that even in the most recent, I believe the most recent budget year, there was a year where there was a gap. It said NA because there was not a survey conducted that year. So that's an example of all throughout the budget document where you see the table where each department has some of their performance metrics, that this is a source of that data typically in the budget. Not every single performance metric, but a lot of them. So that's one place where the survey information has typically been used.
Okay, am I also correct, as I'm thinking about whether or not we should cease doing this, that we shifted last time to partially paper and partially online, and in doing so, we reduced our costs?
Correct.
Okay, so I think there's the perfect and the good here. So I understand the intent, but I'm not prepared to second this. I think we should keep talking a little bit more and figure out what makes sense to do with this survey, which might be separate from other things that we recommend. So back to the chair.
All right, so so not hearing a second, I won't second, so the motion fails for lack of a second. I do think, I think there could be interest in maybe exploring other, because I'm not interested in dropping the survey. I think it provides valuable information to staff, to council, if used correctly, of course, as well as really important to give an opportunity to the public to be able to have their voices concerned. And I know Councilmember Tanaka, you are not suggesting that we no longer do that. I just think it would be premature to drop this survey in hopes that we find another mechanism to be able to do that. I'd be open to maybe exploring other options that are out there in the meantime while we continue with the survey and maybe improving it as it is now. But to simply move on from it,
But sure, if you make that motion, I'll support it if you want to look at alternatives, because I think there's way better ways of doing it than this.
I see Councilmember Cormack has her hand, so I will call on you, Councilmember Cormack.
Thank you, Chair Stone. So why don't I propose this as a motion, see if we can move this forward. Direct staff to reduce the length of the National Community Survey as much as possible, and work with a member of the Policy and Services Committee as an ad hoc. Because I think that would accomplish most of the objectives we've described this evening, which is making it shorter, making sure that it's relevant, And, I'm certainly happy to nominate the chair, having served in this position 2 years ago. I think it's appropriate if Chair Stone is willing to do so. I think it's a good exercise to do so with the staff.
I'll second that. And
Thank you.
I'd be fine, I'd be fine working with staff in that capacity.
All right, and work with the chair then of the Policy and Services. Do
So-
we need to designate it as an ad hoc?
That would be helpful, I think, just to be clear.
Okay.
And do recall that this is a recommendation to council to do these things.
Yes, sorry. It's Tuesday, not Monday.
Yes.
To recommend that council direct staff to reduce the length of the survey. Thank you.
Are you done with your comments, council member?
I am. Good luck. I tried to reduce the length of the survey, so I hope you're more successful than I was.
Yeah, no, I think it's, I'm supporting this. I think it's worthy, attempting to fix what's already there rather than reinventing the wheel. Again, I think there's valuable information here. I'd like to see us take another stab at it, and I'd be happy to work in that capacity with staff. So I think this accomplishes probably what I think maybe the hopes of tonight's action item, because otherwise it would just be too unruly to be able to go through the entire survey tonight at the dais or on Zoom. So support this. Councilmember Tanaka.
I wanted to ask the maker and seconder. So the chair had a idea of maybe working on a alternative approach that perhaps could be more streamlined. I don't know whether you guys would be open to including that in the motion.
Alternative approach to gathering what kind of information?
Well, I don't know, maybe the chair could speak about what he was thinking.
Well, and it wasn't really so much of a proposal, just I thought a better solution to just completely scrapping it. I think this works better now. I think if we do find then that even then this still doesn't work, I'd be open to that. But I don't think we should be doubling the work effort and staff time right now by trying to fix this while also exploring other options.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
all I have.
so
Thank you.
I'm not going to accept that, but that does sound like a sort of like a new work stream. So maybe almost more of a colleagues memo type thing. Okay.
All right, any other comments before we take the vote? I see
I
Ms.
have
Conn
one.
Gaines.
Yes, thank you. I do want to also overlay the timing aspect of this as well. So if this is approved by the committee today, we'll get it to council as soon as is practicable. But I will be working in the background with Polco just to make sure that I understand where we would end up in the Q4-hour survey. And so changes to the survey also is factored into that timeline. I just want to make sure I say that out loud because it may not align as well as we're imagining. So I just want to make sure I provide that caution so that we can try to do things in lockstep.
Yeah, thanks for that, because you are right. We have to have this pretty much ready to go by August, by fall. Okay.
Just about, yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we'll just do our best. All right, any other comments before we take the vote? Okay, can the clerk call the roll?
Chair Stone,
Yes.
Councilmember Cormac,
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka,
No,
the motion carries 2-1.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on then to our second agenda item, which is discussion of city council referral related to strategic priorities and values. Does staff have any type of presentation?
I would also describe this one as just an opening remarks type of thing, not a full presentation. But I will provide the background. At the council retreat this year, the city council sent the following motion to this committee as an outcome of the 2022 priority setting discussion. The referral to Policy and Services Committee is to recommend to the council a set of values that will continue over successive years as values of the city and the community, and to consider the following topics, but not limited to: fiscal sustainability, social justice, healthy city, healthy community, and environmental sustainability. As additional context for this discussion, staff went ahead and looked up just some basic things like what our existing values are here at the city, as well as just sort of broadly defining the term of values and that process. So a little bit of information is in the report there of just values are broadly defined as the principles or standards that you believe are important in the way you live and work. For an organization, they are fundamental beliefs that serve as the guiding principles. For the committee's information, the existing values that are printed each year in the city's budget, there are 5 of them. The first is quality, superior delivery of services. Courtesy is the second, providing service with respect and concern. Efficiency is the third, productive and effective use of resources. Integrity is the fourth, straightforward, honest, and fair relations. And lastly, the 5th one is innovation, excellence in creative thought and implementation. So that's the very, very brief background that staff wanted to provide as the dialogue happened amongst the committee this evening.
Great, thank you. And let's go then to the public.
Chair Stone, there are no public speakers.
Okay, thank you. Then we will move to my colleagues for discussion. Councilmember Cormack.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I've been thinking a little bit about, what we've been asked to do and then what the best way might be for us to move forward. And I'm reminded, frankly, of when we did the diversity, equity, and inclusion work a few years ago, and we ended up coming up with a mission statement that we have continued to refer to throughout our work. And I'm wondering if that might be, I'm thinking that might be a good outcome for us this evening, is to decide that having a paragraph long statement that describes our values would be a way for us to fulfill this referral. And in thinking about doing that, much as I love wordsmithing with all of you on Zoom, I'm guessing this again might be a situation where we might want to designate one of us to partner with Ms. Cotton Gaines and others in staff to sort of, once we come up with the list of things to be included, I think that might be helpful. And then we could bring it back to this committee and we could spend some time on it and then we could take it to council. I'm trying to think of what would be, helpful to councils and staff in the future. I think this is really about, guiding principles, a little bit about the things that we keep in mind as we make decisions. So those are my opening thoughts about what we might do tonight, which is listening to what Ms. Cotton Gaines said, and looking at part B here. I would add innovation to the list of things that we did not have that on the list when we were during the retreat. And I think it'd be possible to put together a paragraph that would help guide us, mostly because we want to be sure that we make these decisions with these in mind and that we don't need to have them as council priorities, right? Fundamentally, that will always be a component of how we make our decisions. So those are my thoughts.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Tanaka, would you like to go or I can go next?
Sure, why don't you go ahead?
All right, sounds good. I am well, sorry, just a clarification question, Ms. Cotton Gaines. Those values that you read, those are the current Palo Alto values, the quality, courtesy, efficiency, integrity, and innovation?
Yes, they are printed each year in the budget. I don't know when that was adopted, though, full disclosure.
Well, I thought, kind of interesting that you pointed out that staff kind of had to look that up or kind of research it. And I wasn't aware of those. I don't know if any other members of council and how many staff are aware. So I do think that shows that this is the right time to come back to this. I think kind of values and a mission statement should definitely be something that you might be able to ask any member of an organization, and they should be able to tell you what those values are or be able to access those really quickly. I think for the most part, they're good values, but I do think there are some things that are missing, and agree with Councilman McCormack on some of the additions. I am curious. I do think, yeah, I really think kind of these value statements should be a little more bottom up than top down. I'd really like to see some more feedback from staff. I just think it's really important that everyone within the organization feels included in these values, and that way that they can own the values. Of course, I think council as the elected body here needs to play a large role and a leadership role. But if it's not something that the staff of the organization feels like that it resonates with them, then I don't know maybe how valuable they're going to be. So I'm just kind of curious, maybe if the city manager is here, I can't tell, to just maybe for him to opine how meaningful kind of recrafting our values would be at this time, and maybe how engaged he'd like to be in helping lead this effort with staff, or maybe that kind of partnership between council and staff on drafting this.
Well, thank you, Chair. I am here. First off, just to note that, turn that camera on. I would note that it could be a very timely effort to involve a staff input process. That said, I would also note that it would likely be a pretty substantial undertaking. So thinking through a process through which both staff would provide input as well as the council would express its perspective might be challenging to do simultaneously. So perhaps putting the two thoughts together, if the council, and I didn't get the sense from Councilmember Cormack's comments that she was necessarily building out a whole new set of values, so much as a statement that would reflect the council's perspective, and in particular how that relates to the annual priority setting effort, then it might make sense to do that as a first step, and to proceed with the bottom-up review of our values as a subsequent step. So just one suggestion.
Okay, great. That's helpful. And so, do you think? I mean, being the essentially the CEO of this organization, that I guess the format that Councilmember Cormack discussed, because it would be a little different than the current structure of the bullet points. Do you think kind of like that paragraph form or a few sentences would be beneficial for something like a value statement?
Well, I would note that there are a number of different ways that I've seen this approached, whether it be, whether you call it a value statement or a mission statement or some variation on the options there. And again, I'm reflecting on Chair, your comments to the extent that it's a bottom-up approach, that's a very different endeavor than would be kind of the more visionary and statement that would be reflected from really the leadership of the institution, which is the city council. So that's why I didn't necessarily interpret Councilmember Cormack's comment, and perhaps could use some clarification on whether it would replace the bullets, the statements that are in our budget, or if it would potentially complement it, which again would um, lead to, again, potentially our next step being to have that discussion on the 7 what do we call them, ideals or concepts that reflect that listing of values.
Yeah, let's maybe Councilmember Cormack, you can just kind of weigh in on your thinking on that.
Sure. I view the list of things that the council referred to us as sort of how we make decisions. And when I listen to the values listed in the budget, they sound like how staff does their work. So a little bit simplistic, and I think that they're two different things. I don't think we are being asked to tell the staff how to do their work. I think we're being asked to identify a set of enduring values this community believes we will use when we're making decisions. And those are things as basic as, pay your bills, even if those bills are coming in 20 years, and, be welcoming to everyone. And we should all try to be healthy, and let's keep the environment in mind. I mean, it's not super complicated, but I do think we can put them in a format that will make it, I think what we're trying to do is make the priority setting easier next year and thereafter. And because the priorities really shouldn't be even some of these things in the survey we talked about earlier. They should be, what are things the council is going to work on during a year? And, these other things should be embedded in our decisions. So I hope that's helpful. I do think they're two different things, what we're being asked to do today and and how the staff does their work.
Yeah, and I agree. They're two different things. I guess I'd like to just, my comments is I would like to be able to see some sort of just kind of confluence here of kind of both parts of the organization kind of coming together to be able to find where these common values are. I just think we would have I think that would help the organization as a whole run smoother if it feels like this was a partnership. That's why I'm trying to understand if the city manager agrees with that, and maybe how we can structure it in a way so staff feels like they own this, and as well as council. I just think that seems like it would be a better process, even though I agree with the direction that Councilmember Cormack is suggesting.
Sure. And if I might comment, Chair, I could see them complementing very well. And again, in terms of a sequence, at the risk of making it sound even bigger than it needs to be, I would undertake an effort with our staff around being able to articulate and update our organizational values, as Councilmember Cormack described it, how we do our work, as a very serious undertaking that I'd want to work with our team on planning out and being able to execute genuinely, because obviously it has the potential in I'll call it a worst case scenario to be seen as just an exercise. And clearly we wouldn't want that to be the case. At the same time, I will admit that having now been with the city for a little more than 7 years, that I look at our values and think, they could use a refresh. The listing, they could use a refresh. And so if the council leads by taking on this next step of a statement to guide how decisions are made, then we could very cleanly follow up as a following step in the effort that we've just described.
That's great. That's helpful. And I think that would be good. And yeah, definitely experience that feeling of being in a large organization and, just not wanting something to just be another exercise that you feel is not worth your time. So I think that sounds reasonable. And so, yeah, I'm supportive of the direction that Councilmember Cormack was describing. I just thought a couple other things that could be included in that, and the potential topics that have already been listed. We got the fiscal sustainability, social justice, healthy city, healthy community, environmental sustainability. I've got two things that could be included there. Could be around diversity and equity. and then the other around government accountability and transparency. Both seem to be two really important values for council in the city to embrace and articulate in those values. So those are my thoughts. Councilmember Tanaka.
So I'm looking at the list here and listening to the conversation, and I wonder whether we should, because there's like the yearly priorities that we have, right, from every retreat. And then this seems to be more something that's supposed to last over several years. And yeah, I wonder whether this stuff should be more like just fundamental. So rather than like the ones listed on B, whether it should be something simple like, serve the public in a efficient, customer-friendly manner. So something really basic like that, because I just wonder, because some of the stuff may change, right? Maybe now it's one of these items, and and that's our yearly priorities that we set every time. But because I think at the heart of what the city is it's a customer service organization to the public, right? It's to serve the public, make sure that things go smoothly. And so I wonder whether we should have, whether the value or the things that are more, that are supposed to last between the many different city councils that the city will go through, should be something more along those lines versus issue of the day type of thing. So that's what I'm thinking about. Not that these are not important, but I just think if you're taking the long-term view, the long-term view is, why does the city exist? And maybe our value is not gonna be that different from other cities, but I think it probably isn't, because I think the function of a city is to serve the people, right? And so I'm just thinking of something simple like that, because if it's something that we have to look up and people can't remember, that's a big problem. Is it really helping? But I think we should never lose sight as to why does the city exist, right? The city exists to serve the people, at least in my mind. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of something very simple, and we could call it a day. But I don't know, my colleagues, you guys are welcome to give feedback and thoughts on that. But that's where I'm headed.
Well, I do agree that the city's purpose is to serve the community, but I think the potential topics that have already been listed: fiscal sustainability, social justice, healthy city, healthy community, environmental sustainability, and then my two recommendations of accountability and diversity or equity. Unfortunately, I don't think any of those are problems that are ever going to be completely solved and no longer the main priorities of the city. So I think those are things that today, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, would continue to be top priorities. And I like kind of what Councilmember McCormack was talking about, how I think part of the purpose of tonight's item is to then hopefully make the priority planning process a little simpler in the coming years, to no longer have to make these city priorities, because they're going to be actual city values that we're going to strive for in everything we do. I just can't think of a scenario where those would no longer be priorities or values for the city. But I think your point is well made, that I think there is value to in making them very simple and easy to remember. But of course, we have simple and easy to remember values now, and no one knows what they are. So I don't know how beneficial it is in the end, anyways. Any other thoughts, or if anyone has a motion prepared, we'll entertain those as well. Councilmember McCormack.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I threw out an idea earlier. I'm not sure if we're quite ready for motions. I appreciate Councilmember Tanaka's belief that this is a service organization that should run efficiently, but it's honestly, it's a lot more than that. And So I guess I'd be interested in my colleagues' thoughts on how to move forward with this list. If you think that we should designate somebody to work with staff, if you want us to do this work together at our next meeting, if there's some other method you have in mind, I'm certainly willing to volunteer to partner with staff to take a first stab at something. And if it doesn't work, we can go in another direction. But I'd be interested in your thoughts on how we move forward. And I think Chair Stone missed innovation, which was the one I pulled from the list of the ones that are in the budget. I think, the past couple of years, we've innovated out of necessity, but I think in general, that should be an enduring value. So happy to volunteer to help do some wordsmithing here and see if that's the right direction, but also open to other suggestions.
I like that idea, and I think you'd make the perfect member of the ad hoc committee. You're very talented at wordsmithing, and you seem to enjoy doing it, which I definitely do not. So not to volunteer you, but kind of heard an offer to volunteer. So
I volunteered myself.
Okay, good. So I'll attempt a motion then and see if we capture what it is that we're talking about here. So and see if we can maybe if the clerk can just copy paste the motion from item 1 here to just start off as sort of a draft, because I think it'll kind of mirror this in some way. Okay, so direct staff to work with council. Do I need to specify? Well, I can work on this. Direct staff to work with a council member from Policy and Services Committee as an ad hoc.
Chair, if I might suggest, we were just having a little sidebar here and suggested, why not be specific and identify Councilmember Cormack? That might reduce any confusion or uncertainty for the rest of the council.
Direct staff to work with Councilmember Cormack as an ad hoc to draft a new vision statement. Oh, sorry, is it a vision statement or a value statement?
A set of values is what's in the referral.
Okay, to draft a new set of values
For the city and the community.
Perfect. For the city and community, to include, and then let me find where's my list here, to include fiscal sustainability, environmental sustainability, social justice, healthy city, healthy community, innovation, accountability / transparency, diversity and equity. And I'm open to modifications here. I just wanted to get a motion on the floor.
I will second that, and then I'll have some questions for staff as we go through.
Okay, wonderful. So I'll just I like the process that Councilmember Cormack proposed. I don't think we're ready to do this fully at the dais tonight. So I think having an ad hoc to work with staff to be able to do this and then come back to us at a later date makes sense. The nice thing is we're not in a time crunch to get this done. So I think this is something that makes sense to be able to kind of have that time to be able to work on and really finesse. And as I said during my exchange with Councilmember Tanaka, I think this is really going to be able to kind of help our city priority setting in the future, if we can just point to these as values that we're consistently working on. Hopefully that will allow us to be able to then focus on other values and really be able to kind of focus our time then in future retreats. And I think Councilmember Cormack would be perfect to be able to work on wordsmithing this.
All right, shall I speak to my second?
Yes, please.
Okay. Just asking our experienced and talented staff, is there something missing from this understanding? We'll be able to add to it, but is there a general value that we have? I mean, in accountability, transparency, I think I'm already going to rewrite that to like something along the lines of, engagement with the community, because I think it's about more than just, one-way conversation. But anything missing that you'd like us to include before we get started?
I think this provides a sufficient framework for our next steps, and so have nothing to add.
Okay, thank you.
I had one clarification question. Did Chair Stone, did you have that as diversity/equity or and equity? I know that was your original thought, but in the written motion, I only saw diversity.
Yes, thanks for catching that. Diversity and equity.
Okay, thank you.
And I just briefly to quickly, add, I also think this doesn't limit it to say that if the ad hoc and staff come up with other things that really need to be included in that value statement, then I think this provides the opportunity for that, but ensuring that these are included.
Yeah, and sorry, I'll just say it's possible we'll end up with a couple different versions or a couple different methods. It may be that we'll have a variety of things to provide, and that will enable the committee and then the council to choose what fits our needs best.
I think that would be great.
On that point, if I might ask for clarification, it's not stated, but I did believe I heard the intent is that this will be an ad hoc, develop a draft, and will it come back to the Policy and Services Committee before it goes to the full council?
Yes, and do we have to go to council to do that? Can't we just do that work ourselves?
Yes.
We do have
good
to go to
point.
council to
No,
do it? No, I'm confused. Okay,
I mean, for ultimate adoption, of course, yes, that's council, but you can work on it. You can ask that it come back here to work and get organized as a committee before it goes back to council.
okay, then Chair Stone, if you'd be willing to remove the part after my name at the beginning of the motion, so we're not sending this to council before we get started, because that's just going to slow things down.
Sorry, what would?
No,
what-
it said, right now the motion reads that you move, seconded by me, to recommend to city council.
Yeah.
Staff has indicated that we can skip that part and just do our work.
Yes.
Okay, so if the clerk could just remove that portion. See, and I said we weren't going to wordsmith tonight.
So it's in your nature, so that's why this is going to be perfect for you. So go ahead. Anything else?
No, I'm going to stop now.
Okay, perfect. Councilmember Tanaka.
Okay, well, thank you, Councilmember Cormack, for taking this on. I think that's great that you're willing to do this. So I can think of a few other ones I think are important and maybe more timeless. So how about like good customer service? Would you guys be open to adding that?
Help me understand, sorry, I'm just going to take this off. Help me understand how that will help council make better decisions.
I thought this is for staff, right? For staff to remember.
This is for us to make policy decisions, right? This is going to be part of how we make decisions on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
I mean, again, I think that gets to how the organization does its work, not the values that guide it. I realize it's a bit of a gray area.
Okay. The reason why I mention this is because, and maybe it's just the nature of my office hours, but I mean, a good portion of my office hours are people complaining about customer service at the city. I realize it's really bland and not exciting, but I'm not sure if you guys, I know some of you guys hold office hours as well, but I mean, that's something that seems to be important to people. Well, I realize this is not what the press writes about, or, what we necessarily talk about at our council meetings, but I do think it's important to people.
I agree with you that I think it's important. I guess I'm curious, maybe if staff can weigh in. Do you concur with Councilmember Cormack's view of what that this statement is meant for how council does its work, or more organization? For the entire organization.
Well, really, again, it's open for discussion, but I would say consistent with our prior exchange, I thought we were headed toward this statement really being focused, and perhaps it could use a few more words to clarify that it's focused on council, either decision-making or some version of that. And then again, a subsequent step after this is settled will be for myself and our team to work on the follow-up that reflects how the organization does its work.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think that makes more sense. Maybe we can just then add a new set of values for the city council.
And so are we is this trying to be just for our city council that goes to the end of November, or I guess end of this year, or is this for all future city councils?
I guess all future city councils, but then they of course will have the right to modify it if they so choose. Councilmember Cormack, are you fine with that change in the language?
Yes. And you know what? I think this will be good clarification for the council. I think this was towards the end of the retreat, as I recall, and we were all on Zoom, and we're going to take a stab at it. If it comes back and it turns out, collectively we want something different, then we'll do something different. But
Okay.
personally, having gone through this 4 times, I think it would behoove us to have a list of things that we consistently believe as a council for the community. Maybe that's how to think about it. As the council for the community, we believe in environmental sustainability, right? Let's just write that down. So we're not having annual discussions about how important it is, and we can refer to that so that we really can focus our priorities on the work that we need to do in that year.
So I guess I'm just trying to understand how is the city council supposed to use this? Because, pretty much at our retreat, we talk about what are our top priorities and we come up with a list. But how does this help? Like, if this is for city council here, how does this help us? Like, what is this accomplishing? Because whoever's on city council is going to decide that. It doesn't, the 3 of us are not going to decide that for future city council. Even the whole city council of this year is not going to decide that for a future year. So I guess I'm just trying to understand what are we accomplishing by doing this? Maybe that can be clarified, because I'm a little bit, I'm trying to see the connection here.
You say me?
Well, I think quite a bit. I mean, for example, right, fiscal sustainability has been in some city manager. Your mic is hot. Right, so for the last couple of years, we've had fiscal sustainability or something related to that, as well as environmental sustainability. The way I see this moving forward would then mean that council would no longer have to call those out as a city priority for the year, because that would be part of our value statement. And that's something that would inform the work that council and staff continues to do, essentially in perpetuity until a future council decides to change this. And I don't know if Councilmember Cormack envisioned this in any different way, but that's kind of how I interpreted some of your prior comments as well.
No, I'm in exactly the same boat. I think I had just described that same scenario. I'll use fiscal sustainability as an example. We just had the conversation last night about the Section 115 pension trust. Staff is in just, it's in their DNA now that, we're going to save money ahead of time and we're going to pay that down. That's part of fiscal sustainability, right? So I see these values actually already permeating the staff and the budget and the other things they bring forward, but I think it's worth identifying them And no, Councilmember Tanaka, I don't think we're binding anybody, but I'm just looking at the first referral, Part A, right? Values that would continue over successive years as values of the city and the community. Right? So I think it will help us and future councils if we write these down on a piece of paper and agree to what they are, so that next year and the year after and the year after, when people come forward with the results of the survey and they say, hey, it's really important that, this be a priority. We can say it's a part of our enduring values. We make decisions that way, and we're going to use as a priority this year, whatever the next thing is.
So when I read A, the referral to policy and services recommend to council a set of values that will continue over successive years as values of the city and the community. It didn't say as values for the city council, but up here in the motion, it seems to be centered on the city council. And I think by nature, city council is political, right? We are elected by the people. Some people get elected, reelected, not elected, right? Depending on the whims of the community. But this is supposed to be enduring, right? This is supposed to be continue over successive years as values of the city and community. It didn't say this city council, because I think the nature of the city council, I think whoever's elected is going to put whatever values they feel they think are important, no matter what this says. So I don't understand how you guys think we're gonna, by doing this, this is going to give direction. Does it mean that, I guess I just don't, I can understand this is maybe for the values of the city and community, maybe this has a little bit more value, but to impose this on a elected political people that, probably aren't even serving in office right now, I don't see how that's going to work, right? Why in 2022 did this city council get to put guardrails on future city councils? I just don't see that. I just don't see how that works. So I guess I'm more supportive of what's on the original page 1, which is as values of the city and community. That makes sense to me, kind of, right? I mean, I can kind of get that. But when you start trying to bound it on certain political, people that are, our successors in the future, I don't see how that's possibly going to work. So I would say that, I'd be more supportive of a motion that the way it reads on A versus one that's trying to be oriented towards city council. I don't think that's going to work, because the people in the future are going to be elected and they're going to have whatever priorities they have, they're going to have no matter what this says.
Councilmember Cormack, your hand is raised. Is that?
Yes, why don't we take out the word council for the city to include blah, 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 blah. And it may be that we need to add back in that the city council, Councilmember Tanaka, you were at the retreat as well. It's very clear where this came from, right? In an effort not to have 10 things be a priority, right? We discussed how do we really focus on what we need to get done in a year while acknowledging these super important values that the community has. So I don't think it should be a surprise that what we're doing here tonight. This is what we all agreed to. So it's certainly fine with me if we say that we can go back to saying for the city and the community. I don't think we need to specify that the council is going to use this to make decisions. I don't think the three of us should do that. I think we should work through the process and bring it back and see how council wants to use it. Again, it was late in the day. This is the first time we've tried to do it. So I don't think the three of us tonight can solve that, but I think it's worth putting these values down on paper and then figuring out if they will help us in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is very consistent with the council direction at the retreat. And I also just disagree that this is binding future councils. This is a power that all councils have. And so if future council wants to change this, they can simply go through this very same process. I also disagree that this is incredibly political. I think this is very consistent with Palo Alto values. And I struggle to see a situation where we would have a future council in the future that would disagree with fiscal sustainability, environmental sustainability, social justice. All of those things. To disagree with any of these would be so far outside of the norm of Palo Alto values. I don't see that. So I can understand certain very hot topic, truly controversial political issues that don't belong here. But things like diversity and equity, that is a Palo Alto value, and I'm very comfortable moving this forward. Councilmember
I
Tanaka,
guess,
again.
you know, the city's 100, I mean, if you look maybe past 10 years, I'd probably agree. But if you think about, you know, the city, the fact that, you know, we're 125 plus years old, and hopefully we'll be around for 100 plus more years. For something like 125 years ago, whether people even thought about social justice, right? I don't know, right? I think that's a relatively new term. So I guess if we're really looking for something enduring, I don't know, right? I mean, and then the second thing I'm thinking about is you know, I think the way we can help staff is through prioritization, right? So if everything is important, right, we list everything under the sun. What is truly important then, right? I mean, and so I guess I'm just trying to think about how this is used and how it will benefit the city. And if, you know, we just have come with a massive laundry list of all the stuff that we have ever suggested or thought about, I mean, is that really helping? I mean, we had trouble even remembering what it was, and I think it was a shorter list. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking about this right now. I mean, I can understand like if it's a core value, right? Something that's going to stay with the city for like, you know, at least the next 50 years or something long term. I get it, but I don't know. And this is a pretty long list of stuff. I mean, I think, I mean, it would be ideally something that someone could print on the badge, right? And someone could look and go, oh yeah, that's our value. Okay, great. Okay, good. And then here's the priorities for cities, and this, you know, 3 to 5 things that change every year. But to say our values are, I mean, how many do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8. Like starting with 8 now. Maybe we're going to come up with more. I don't know. It just seems like it seems like I'm just trying to think of, and actually I kind of like all of these too, so I'm not opposed to them. I'm just trying to think of it practically. How is it being used, and how is it being helpful, or is it just another list of stuff that someone's going to tuck away somewhere and not going to remember? That's what I'm worried about. So I'm not opposed to these particular things. It's just I'm just trying to figure out how's it being used, and we can't really talk about this stuff on council because this is kind of too much in the weeds here. But you know, perhaps the three of us could think about it a little bit more. But that's my worry about this. It's not so much the ideas here. It's just I'm just worried of how enduring that they really are. And I realized, you know, in the past 10 years, probably all these were around. But you know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, were some of these even around? Probably not. And how do we know what the ones are going to be in the future? Now we can say, well, we're just going to every council is going to reset it. But then if we're going to reset it, then why not this would be the year of the priorities? What's the difference between that and this? So I'm just trying to think of the practical use of this.
Councilmember Cormac.
In the absence of any amendments, I'm just wondering if the chair is ready to call the question.
Yep, I was waiting to record Councilmember Tanaka's kind of final objection there and seeing if there's any responses or offers of amendment, but not hearing any. Then yeah, I think we've all expressed our.
Okay, well, I made one proposal, which is good customer service, and I think that's rejected, right? You guys didn't want to do that, right?
No, I don't think it fits.
Good customer service is not a value we want to have. Okay, then I have a second one, safety. And we heard, you know, people want to have a safe city, you know, heard crime's a bit of an issue. Do you think safety should be a concern for the city? Or do you think that's not a core value? You guys tell me. You guys could reject that, that's okay. But I heard
Tanaka, if you can please out of just kind of decorum, just offer an amendment. And
okay,
then
I offer amendment having safety.
Just safety, public safety.
Okay, let's call it public safety. Sure.
Okay, I'd accept the amendment to add public safety. I think it kind of goes in with healthy city, healthy community. But if you want to call it out specifically, that's fine with me. I'd accept it. Councilmember Cormac.
I think values are different than services. So providing public safety is a service. I don't think it's a value of the city. I realize that sounds a bit semantic. So thinking on the fly here, which is exactly what I was hoping we were not going to be doing this evening. I'm going to go back to my earlier statement that it's possible that staff and I will bring together back a range of options. And perhaps it will even have a hierarchy, right? Maybe there'll be a section that says, here are the services the city provides, because newsflash, tons of people have no idea who live here what the city does. So first of all, can we take out the word new? Chair Stone, great.
That's fine.
Set of values for the city. Okay, so after diversity and consider, let's say, and consider describing essential city services such as public safety.
I like that.
That I'm willing to accept. And I just have to say, Councilmember Tanaka, no one here thinks that safety is unimportant. I don't think it's
I
very.
didn't say that.
No,
I'm
well,
just-
you said we could reject it and say it wasn't, I'm not sure if the word was important, but I do want to differentiate between values and services. So sorry to the clerk, I can't, oh, I see it. I can't see all of it. Okay, so after between and public safety, I think I said, and consider, did I say describing? City services such as public safety. If anyone has a better memory, let me know. Okay, I'm happy to accept that.
All right, thank you. So that's been incorporated into the motion. Councilwoman Tanaka, do you have any other amendments to offer?
Okay, well, that's not what I had in mind, but that's fine. You guys could do, you guys are the maker and seconder, so that's fine. I think the last one is, and I don't see incorporated as a value, which is efficiency. So I'd like to make the motion to add efficiency to the list.
Hey, again, I think this is just kind of like different than what the sort of the spirit of this particular set of values is going. I mean, that seems like that's going to be more in line with what the city manager was sort of describing as far as that additional process with maybe redefining values at the city organizational level with staff, not so much. Now, are you talking about efficiency with how city council does its work?
No, I don't. Again, I don't think this should be for city council because I like I said, I think city council members will be elected and they're going to have their own agenda and prerogatives.
Okay.
So I just don't feel like we could set guardrails for future city councils. It doesn't
Yeah,
make sense to me.
we've had that discussion. Okay, yeah, so I won't accept the efficiency.
That's fine.
Again,
That's all I had then. Thank you.
Here. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, with no other, doesn't look like any more comments, then clerk, can you call the roll?
Chair Stone,
Yes.
Councilmember Cormac,
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka,
No.
the motion carries 2-1.
Great, thank you. So that does it for our action items for tonight, and that just brings us on to future meetings and agendas. Ms. Gaines.
For the upcoming meeting in May, there are quite a few items, more items than there probably is time. And so over the coming weeks, we will work with the city auditor's office and see which items will actually be able to come to committee. But at last night's council meeting, we went through the work plans. And the main change from what was discussed last night is that the items on the renter protections, we're working to see if something can come before your break in June, just based off staff bandwidth, et cetera. So that's probably the main difference between what was in the council packet yesterday. But other than that, we're trudging forward on going forward on the list of work plan items that you have, in addition to the new referrals that came yesterday.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, and with that, we have nothing else on the agenda, so we are adjourned. Have a great night, everybody.